Hey collectors, welcome back to the workshop. If you're new here, welcome. We talk about movies, collecting, physical media, all of the little details that make owning the things that we love feel special. A lot of you so far have found this channel through my previous 10K starter pack video, and I just want to say thank you. It's been so great to be part of this community, and I've just really enjoyed all of the interactions and time and comments that you've been leaving. One of the most common comments that you all have been leaving, and one that I completely agree with, is this: you should just buy the movies you love. That's pretty simple, and you're absolutely right. So with that in mind, this video is not about trying to tell you what to love. It's about helping you understand when a 4K upgrade actually does something meaningful, and when that Blu-ray you already own may actually already be quite enough, because not all 4K discs are created equal, unfortunately. So today, instead of ranking anything, I'm breaking things down into 5 categories. 5 specific ways a 4K release can justify its existence. And I'll also be calling out a few cases here and there where, in my opinion, the upgrade might not be worth the squeeze. So grab a snack, dim the lights, and let's jump in. All right. This first category is one of the most important, and one that people often overlook. I know that I did. I'm calling this one restored intent. This category is for upgrades where 4K isn't simply about bumping the resolution or making things look crispy. It's about getting the movie closer to how it was meant to look or be experienced. Let's talk about The Matrix. To me, this is the perfect example of this done right. And you might be asking yourself, Peter, The Matrix? This movie isn't that old. What needs to be restored? Excellent question. And before I answer that, might I have a moment of silence at the thought that we are now nearing the 30th anniversary for this movie. But listen, The Matrix was the first movie that my dad and I picked up when we got our first DVD player. It was the definitive reference disc of the year 2000. And honestly, future releases looked quite good. However, most home releases from that point leaned heavily into this greenish tint that wasn't always consistent or natural. Almost like a TikTok filter was applied over the top. The 4K version, however, pulls that back. It restores better contrast and gives the image more depth without pushing it too far. A key factor here is Dolby Vision, which essentially means that they've applied some of the best in-industry high dynamic range color grading to this movie. Now, Dolby Vision isn't the end-all be-all, but in the case of The Matrix, it helps to separate those shadows from the highlights. When you shop for yourself, you can see if a movie has Dolby Vision applied. It will say so in the specs online or on the back of the disc. You can also see that this disc has Dolby Atmos, which means the sound design has also been addressed, but we'll talk about that in a different category. The takeaway here is it isn't just sharper, it's more accurate. Now, on the flip side, let me give you my hot take on a movie I don't think did this, and that I would recommend you just stick with the Blu-ray. And that is Inception by Christopher Nolan. Which is funny because in my last video, I pretty much said that any Christopher Nolan was a good choice. However, this is an exception for me. On paper, this should have been definitive. In practice, however, it is a great example of how not every 4K upgrade feels transformative to every viewer. If you already own this on Blu-ray, maybe stick with it. The jump here can feel more incremental than revolutionary. And this isn't a bad movie. Actually, it's one of my favorite movies. But it's a reminder that better resolution doesn't necessarily mean better presentation. And that's a really important lesson for new collectors. Next, let's talk about when 4K makes color matter. An upgraded disc needs to earn its keep, not just by being brighter, but by giving the film depth, separation, and nuance. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Blade Runner 2049. Now, honestly, I'm a bit embarrassed to showcase this because the packaging is absolutely awful. This version I own looks like it went through a shredder, but despite that, packaging is a conversation for a whole other video. All right, Blade Runner. We're talking controlled highlights, deep blacks, and incredible color separation, especially in the neon lit scenes. A lot of this film takes place at night and relies heavily on indirect neon lighting. Vibrant indirect lighting that needs to make way for detail without completely blowing out the image in a dozen different places on screen. But nothing is ever pushed too far, and the image feels deliberate from start to finish. If you want to show someone what HDR can do when used in restraint, this is a reference disc for that. And in this category, I have another movie to showcase. I'm considering this my hear me out movie. It is Pacific Rim. Yes, it's loud. Yes, it's bold. But the HDR helps to differentiate the metal from the rain, from the neon, and the motion, instead of turning it all into visual mush. This movie knows exactly what it wants to be, and it delivers on that vision with every frame. Similar to Blade Runner, it blends practical effects with other visual effects and CGI almost seamlessly, and it uses lighting to make those transitions natural. Think about real-life application. Take a city, for example. I'm going to use Las Vegas. Vegas looks much better at night than it does in the middle of the day. Why is that? It's lighting, my friends. Light changes everything. And that exact concept applies to film. Lighting can enhance or detract. And these two films are examples of it done spectacularly well. Now, who didn't quite hit that mark for me? My hot take is Demolition Man. I know, how dare I say anything about an Arrow Video release. It's a super fun movie with a bunch of cheesy one-liners, and it's intended to be over the top. But there are a lot of daytime and other shots in this film that I didn't really feel justified the upgrade. Is this the best presentation this movie has ever had? Probably. Do I also think the Blu-ray is good enough? Yes. You know, some of you mentioned this in the comments of some of my prior videos, and you are absolutely spot on. What you've been saying is sound is half the experience, and sometimes the biggest upgrade. Case in point, A Quiet Place. Kind of funny to use this as an example, since the premise of this movie relies on silence, but the sound design here is everything. Think soundscape used for storytelling, and Dolby Atmos here absolutely delivers. Silence, placement, dynamic range, they all work together to create the tension of the film. Small sounds have weight, and power in this movie. It's immersive without being loud, and it completely reshapes how the film feels at home. I was really impressed with this one. Another one that kind of hits the mark on every single category today, but I wanted to place here specifically, Top Gun Maverick. I mean, yes, it looks gorgeous. Oh, can I do this? Oh. But also the unsung hero here is the spectacular reference level Atmos sound mix. Jets tear through the soundstage. Height channels are constantly active, and the mix is clean, aggressive, and precise. Even if the visuals weren't a big jump, which they are, the sound alone justifies the disc. This movie was designed for the theatrical experience, and this package just hits every single one of those chords as hard as it can. Unlike, unfortunately, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now I know what you're thinking. This is kind of a rom-com type of a movie, and it's a great movie, no questions about it. But the design of the movie isn't to be grandiose in its sound design. This is a dialogue-driven movie, pretty light on its sound design, and the Blu-ray already delivers most of that. The 4K does look nice, but in my opinion, doesn't fundamentally change the experience. That's my take at least. So for Ferris Bueller, I'd keep this one on Blu-ray. Okay, if you care about authenticity, then this next category matters to you. It is film grain and texture. I've talked a lot about this in my last video, but let's highlight it again with The Shining. Yep, another Kubrick film. In my last video, I highlighted 2001: A Space Odyssey. What can I say? The teams upgrading his releases are doing fantastic work. The grain is intact, the color ranges are restrained, nothing is over-processed, and the atmosphere is thicker than ever. Now, a word about film grain. In a digital world, why even bother with film grain? A lot of it is preference, but I like to think about it as gloss versus matte finishes. The dimensionality of the finish impacts the final product. Grain is your matte finish on film. It helps to prevent an image from looking flat or overly smooth. It gives faces texture, environments weight, and shadows a sense of atmosphere. When it's preserved properly, the movie feels alive rather than frozen or processed. In 4K especially, good grain management is important because higher resolutions means you're seeing more of what was actually photographed. When grain is stripped away, you might get a smoother image, but you often lose detail, character, and a sense of realism. The Shining is a textbook example of how to modernize a presentation without stripping away that identity. Another great example of this is Coraline. This is where animation really shines in 4K. This is a stop motion feature, and at 24 frames per second, that means that every single frame of the movie is essentially a high resolution photograph. Textures pop, depth increases, and the handcrafted nature of the movie becomes apparent, not smoothed away. It actually might be in this movie or in Paranorman, one of them. In some frames, you can even see fingerprints from the animators. That's how textural this is. It's the perfect example of 4K enhancing artistry. Now, my hot take, not so great entry for this category is Jurassic Park. Such a great movie. This one definitely splits opinions. Some love the added detail. Others aren't fans of the grain management or HDR on here, including myself. There's some grain here, but they've favored what's called noise reduction in quite a few places, and a lot of the texture has been lost. Noise reduction essentially means removing the grain to favor resolution and smoothing out of those edges. It can feel pretty jarring when it's noticeable. It's not a bad disc, but it's one where your tolerance for re-envisioning will decide how you feel about it. I'd be curious about your thoughts around the Jurassic Park release. For me, it was fine. So some films are meant to overwhelm your senses, and 4K lets them do that. And lo and behold, I'll highlight this category through my honorable mentions from the last video that I actually never got to. And that is Dune and the 10 Commandments. Let's start with Denis Villeneuve's Dune, Part 1 and Part 2. Massive scale, deep contrasts, disciplined HDR, and an Atmos sound mix that surrounds everything. Absolute standout scenes for me are the ones that take place on the Harkonnen planet. And I grew up with the David Lynch version of Dune, so it is Harkonnen, not Harkonnen. I will die on that hill. But those Harkonnen, essentially black and white scenes in Dune Part 2 are just absolutely stunning. Besides that, the sets themselves feel massive. And yes, you could argue that that's technically direction and cinematography and set design, not so much restoration. But the 4K format absolutely gives the space needed to honor that vision. These movies look, sound terrific, absolutely incredible. I can't wait for the third one. Now, the 10 Commandments. Just a gorgeous movie. I wanted this here. The 10 Commandments is a massive, large format production. And the 4K restoration brings out incredible detail in the costumes, sets, skin tones, fabrics. I put this on for my wife and daughter, several months ago, and they were completely engrossed in this production that is nearly 70 years old now. That's a feat. That's immersion. You can't replace that with compressed streaming. HDR here adds depth without overpowering the image either. And the scale of the filmmaking finally feels matched with the presentation itself. If you want to truly experience what a golden age production of cinema was like, this is the classic to check out. Now, within this category, here's one that I don't think added anything through the format, and that is Avatar. You can fight me on this if you'd like to, but I truly believe that the Blu-ray delivers on scale and scope just as well, if not better, than the new 4Ks do. Sure, I didn't buy the second re-release special edition box set for $50, but I don't think I ever will. This version, surprisingly, looks and sounds incredible still. It's still a reference quality Blu-ray after 15 years. Sure, the clarity of the new 4Ks is impressive, but I'd argue that the image there is too clean. It's almost like a documentary style aesthetic. It is an image upgrade, not questioning that. But whether it should look that refined, is where my opinion splits. Unless you're a super fan or you don't own any other version, I'd not bother upgrading Avatar. But by now, you know how this works. I give you my opinion, and I welcome yours in the comments. All right. At the end of the day, this isn't about telling you what to buy. If you love a movie, that's always reason enough to own it. But if you're deciding which upgrades are worth your money, I hope this video gives you a better sense of what 4K can actually offer you, and when it might not. If you own any of these movies, I would genuinely love to hear from you what you think about those releases. And if you enjoy this content, as always, please consider liking, subscribing, and interacting with the community here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Keep collecting.